At North Bay and at Goose Bay, you had your scramble shacks right on the end of the runway, just off the runway. And so you'd be on 12-hour shifts, and you'd be there, full flying gear. So you would report half an hour in before, say, your shift was to take, and you'd set up your airplane. So in other words, your airplane's in the scramble shack with the doors closed, and you'd put your helmet there and your oxygen mask and everything, your parachute and everything. You'd set the airplane up, get the trims, controls, and everything set at takeoff position, so that when the horn went, and then you went into the ready room. And we used to play a lot of bridge, and we used to play a lot of ping pong, keep your reflexes sharp. And the horn would go. Usually you got maybe a 10-second warning. They'd say a possible scramble and something like that. I'm not sure what the word were. And then the horn would go, the Claxton horn. And you had to run like heck. And so the ground crew were on one side, and you were in there, and then you'd run out the airplane, scramble up the hangar, up the ladder, and the ground crew would help you strap in, oxygen mask, the helmet on, and then give them the thumbs up. Meanwhile, he had the APU, external auxiliary power unit plugged in, plug it in, okay, and give him the wind-up signal, and away you went. Fire up one engine, fire up the other engine, he'd pull the plug and open the doors, and away you went. Now, the only problem was, on the CF-100, it usually took about a minute and a half for the gyros to get fully wound up to speed, and so that you would have artificial horizon and some of your instruments. So you had to sometimes kind of slow down a little bit, because you sure as heck didn't want to be taking off with no instruments into cloud, and particularly at night, because once you're in cloud and once you lift off that runway, it's just pitch black, and you have no concept of where you are, up, down, whatever. You have to fly on your instrument. So basically, then you get scrambled, and they'd say scramble vector 045, climb to Angels 35, and then check in with such and such radar on such and such channel. So you take off, climb, head out, call radar, and they'd say, Roger, we have a target 45 miles out, flying such and such a heading, unknown. Okay, so then what the controller on the ground then would vector you, and so normally we did what was called a 90-degree. Okay, so that the idea was your target would be flying along here, and if you were going to shoot him down, your rockets would fire about here, and then he would pass in front of you, he'd hit the rockets, and then you were behind him, so you're behind the debris field, and then you'd peel off and get the heck out of there. If you're going for an identification run, you came around the corner and you pulled up beside him. So the guy on the ground would determine what would be the best attack. So he would say, okay, you got a target, and he'd vector you until you got a target. Guy in the back would lock onto your target. Okay, then once he's locked on, I had a bip, and I'd fly the bip and pull up beside him, or attack.
And when the call came to be scrambled, how many aircraft?
Two.
Would go up? Oh,
Two. You're always in twos. Yeah. And now that's the difference. So remember I said about flying formation. F-86 Sabres always took off in pairs and took off as a formation, okay? And they often flew in fours, too. We always went in twos. And what we would do is you'd be sitting on the runway, full throttle, okay, brake release, the leader would go. And then 3 seconds later, the next guy would go. And so that put you about 1,000 yards behind. And so what would happen is if you were in cloud and you couldn't see the guy, then my airborne interceptor in the back, he would have him on the screen, and he would tell me how many yards he was away, and lift right a little bit, and I would maintain that until you got clear, and then what you did was you sat off on the wingtip about 1,000 yards, and so the lead guy would take all the, and you sort of position yourself to him. But the idea was that if the front guy, anything happened to the front guy, or if you missed, or you needed more rockets, then the second guy would go in.